Hello everyone, my name is Hongwei from Northwestern University, and today I will present our work, a micromechanics-based hyperelastic framework for adaptive elastic anisotropy of granular materials with general particle shapes. I'd like to begin with the motivation. Granular materials are increasingly being explored as architected material because their macroscopic behavior can be tailored through particle arrangement and particle shape. On the left, this study shows that by programming particle arrangement, a granular assembly can be transformed from flexible to load-bearing. And on the right, another study shows that tailoring particle shape can significantly enhance stiffness and strength. These examples reveal an important design opportunity. Instead of only asking how granular material responds, we can also ask how to engineer a designed elastic response of granular materials. And this leads to the central question of this work. Can we develop a model to guide the bottom-up design of granular elasticity with adaptive anisotropy? There are two main types of hyperelastic modeling for granular materials. The first type is the phenomenological type, which describes the anisotropy elasticity in a thermodynamically consistent way using the strain energy function, incorporating the second order fabric tensor. But this type of method is usually calibrated from the macroscopic observations. And the second is the mechanistic approach, where the constitutive response is derived directly from the particle scale contact mechanics. And a landmark example is INF's work, which links the macroscopic elasticity to the energy stored at the interparticle contacts. Later studies show that this micromechanical energy framework can also capture the rotational wave and their dispersion. In this work, our goal is to extend this mechanistic hyperelastic approach to accommodate general particle shapes. This slide presents the micromechanical basis of the model. We begin with the affine deformation, which links the contact displacement to the average strain of the assembly through the local branch vector. And the schematic of affine deformation is shown here. An important result here is that we don't need to check every microscopic detail. Instead, 4 descriptors are enough to capture the dominant source of elastic anisotropy, branch orientation, branch length, contact normal, and equivalent radius. These descriptor functions then provide a compact bridge from the microstructure to macroscopic elasticity and allows us to represent the distribution observed in the experiments which are shown here. At the contact scale, the response is nonlinear, and this is a key ingredient of our framework. The contact stiffness depends on 4 main factors: particle modulus, local curvature, surface roughness, and the normal force. To represent this effect, we use the equivalent Young's modulus and the equivalent radius from the contacting particles. And surface roughness is then introduced through 2 parameters. One is the relative roughness parameter, and another is the fractal dimension, which describes the amplitude and the texture of the contact surface. And the stiffness ratio is also considered here. For smooth contact, it follows middle solution, while for rough contact, the tangential to normal stiffness ratio is usually lower than that. This slide shows how the complementary energy of an anisotropic granular system is built from the micromechanical ingredients. The framework starts from 3 key ingredients: the affine deformation, reversible behavior, and the nonlinear contact law introduced in the previous slide. 3 ingredients are then embedded into the complementary energy formulation by summing the contact level contribution over all orientation in the assembly. The main advantage is that the stored energy remains directly connected to physically meaningful grand-scale quantities, which makes the framework both interpretable and extendable to different particle shapes. From this formulation, we can then derive the elastic compliance matrix. Besides formulation, we validate the continuum model using DEN as a virtual laboratory. We generated granular assemblies with 3 different particle shapes: Leighton Buzzard sand, sphere, and ellipsoid. And then we check how the microstructure evolves under different stress ratios. The 4 subfigures correspond to the 4 key fabric descriptors introduced earlier, and the DEN results are shown by the colored distribution, while the red curve represents the compact distribution function adopted in the continuum model. So 2 points can be made here. First, the one parameter fabric function can capture the major evolution of 4 fabric descriptors, and second, it distinguishes the anisotropy origin of the stress-induced anisotropy and inherent anisotropy. DEM shows that not all descriptors evolve in the same way. Contact normal and branch vector drive stress-induced anisotropy, while branch length and equivalent radius mainly reflect inherent structure. The microstructure information extracted from DEN is now inserted into the continuum model for validation. Across these 6 figures, we compare elastic moduli from continuum and DEN at various particle shapes and confining pressure under both loose and dense conditions. The main result is that the model captures the overall trend in modular evolution as the stress ratio increases. In particular, it reproduces how anisotropy develops during loading and how the response depends on the particle shape, packing state, and pressure level. There are still quantitative differences in some cases. This is because DEM generates a narrower void ratio range. As a result, the framework consistently preserves the dominant macroscopic patterns observed in DEM. This gives us confidence that the micromechanical descriptors provide a meaningful bridge from the particle scale structure to continuum scale anisotropy elasticity. We then test the same framework against the laboratory data. On the left, simple linear evolution laws are used for fabric parameters as functions of stress ratio, which provides a practical way to describe how anisotropic structure evolves during loading, and embedding angle is also included explicitly. On the right, the comparisons show that the model captured the main experimental trends in both Young's moduli and in Poisson's ratio. This is important because it shows that the framework is not limited to DEN. It also captures the mechanical response of real granular material tested in the lab. So what can we learn from the model? First, the largest linear assumptions becomes less reliable as the anisotropy increases, which points to the nonlinear structure in the elastic response, which are shown in these 2 figures. And second, the sensitivity analysis show that not all descriptors matter equally. Branch orientation and branch length and contact normal, they dominate the anisotropic behavior. This helps identify which microscopic features are most important if we want to tune stiffness adaptively through material design. I will close this presentation with 4 key takeaways. The first is the 4 fundamental fabric descriptors we found: the branch orientation, branch length, contact normal, and the equivalent radius. They form a minimal set for anisotropy elasticity. And we did validation across scales. The framework matches DEM and experimental trends across shapes and densities. And we decoupled the anisotropy, so the framework distinguished the origin of inherent anisotropy and the stress-induced anisotropy in granular materials. For further insights, we see that microstructure anisotropy dominant over stress anisotropy, and nonlinear behavior goes beyond largest linear assumption. These are the references I used for this presentation. Thanks for your listening.